That's kind of the big picture. Um, so the thing about talking about job application materials, though, is everyone kind of thinks first about, yeah, I got to make a resume, right? That's kind of what we think of. But what is easy to maybe n- not realize, perhaps, is that before you even begin to work on your job application materials, you kind of have some sort of homework to do for yourself. And really, that sort of investigation that you need to do is to help you to make more effective job application materials, because job application materials are effectively marketing materials, except you're marketing yourself. And so when you're going to market something, you have to do market research before you can start so that you will know what are the kinds of things to put in those materials. So before you actually start working on your resumes and your cover letters or updating your LinkedIn page or whatever you're doing, the first thing you want to do is you want to do sort of a self-evaluation about your skills, your aptitudes, your experiences. Basically, what are you bringing to the situation? And that's going to help you consider maybe the kinds of positions that are realistic for you to investigate, the kinds of things that you're going to stress in your job application materials, um, the kinds of things that you might use as search terms when you're searching for positions. So the first thing you want to kind of be clear about for yourself is, what are you able to do? And so those might be things that you've learned from your education. They might be things you've learned to do from past employment. They might be things you've learned to do from hobbies or just other things as a adult human being in the world, right? And so it can be quite a wide scope of skills and abilities that you have that it's important to explore, right? And not just be too narrow about. But more than just what you are able to do, you also want to think about what you actually like to do. Because there are things that all of us are able to do, but we wouldn't be happy if we had to do it all the time. Even if people paid us to do it, we wouldn't be happy because we don't like to do those things. Maybe they make us very uncomfortable, or maybe um, we just find it very boring, or whatever it may be. Now, that doesn't mean, obviously, you don't have to accept some level of boredom in most jobs, but it's helpful that if you're going to be doing something regularly, day in, day out, then you actually kind of like to do it at least. Additionally, you have to think about what you're actually good at doing, because there are plenty of things we might be able to do and even that we like to do, but we're not that great at it, which means that if we're hired to do that thing and we're not able to pick up the knowledge we need very quickly, our employer's probably not going to be happy with us. We said that we were excellent at this particular thing, as people often do on a resume, but we weren't that great at it, and it shows pretty quickly, and then we're not going to have that job very long, and we're not maybe going to get a good reference from that employer. So make sure as you're thinking about what you're able to do that you're using all three of these lenses, because where you find that overlap, things that you can do, that you like to do, and that you're good at, that's the place to really hone in on in your job application materials. That's going to be the spot that you're going to do best if you're able to promote those things. The other thing you need to do is sort of part of doing your homework before you start working on your job application materials is you need to learn about the job market. So let me ask you guys, what are some ways that you could learn about the job market, or that you have learned about the job market in your respective fields? So you might think about, where you've looked for jobs or where you've learned about things related to your career. So that's kind of a wide net. LinkedIn and Google. So, it's interesting. LinkedIn is one of those things that I feel like I'm not a LinkedIn power user by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever, and I do feel like that there's definitely more ways that I could use that if I were looking for things. Glassdoor, I agree, Jason. One thing I like about Glassdoor is that you can read reviews from past or current employees, and it can kind of maybe let you know what's not a great place to work at, and give you a bit of a sense of the corporate culture of a lot of places. You can't always tell. Teachers and other adults. So I think that, I mean, Riley, you almost said that like it's sort of I don't want to say shameful, that's not quite right. Um, like it's not very normal or regular, but the reality is that most people do learn about the job market and find connections to employment through various kinds of networking, which can come from teachers and family members and friends of friends. In fact, at one point I saw a statistic about how many people got jobs through networking as opposed to just finding an ad and applying for it. And I don't remember what the number was, and I'm not going to make one up, but it was quite high. I was surprised at how much of that was. Now, you do have to be careful because sometimes, especially I've found older family members um, may not have the most current understanding of the job market. So, you have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. Any other thoughts about how you can learn about a job market, especially as students? How might you learn about the job market as a student at University of Houston? Job fairs, yes. So every semester, pretty much, near the start of the semester, it seems like there's usually job fairs. There are sometimes ones that are quite broad. Obviously, the College of Engineering, of which this program is a part, has specific job fairs for engineering and technology. Um, and it can be a really good thing to do even when you're not ready to go on the market. It's still a way to get a sense of what is out there. And I think that's something that's really vital. What is available? Anyone else have any other ideas? Well, I'll mention a couple of other things that you may want to think of. One is, of course, our university does have career services available to students, um, both, again, at the university level and at the specific level of like the College of Engineering or the Technology Division. And some of you I know are not in the College of Engineering, you're in other colleges, but most other colleges also have um, career services as well. So figuring out what is available there to tap into. And another thing to think about is getting involved in student organizations that pertain to your field of study and your future career, because sometimes those student organizations have connections with business and industry. They may bring in um, speakers to present to student groups. They may have connections to getting people internships, and many organizations that have a national or international affiliation may have specific um, information you can tap into as a member. So they may have a member publication that has, whether, might be online, not physical so much, but it would have current trends in the field that can be valuable for you to keep up with. It may have a job board that is specific to that occupation. So what is relevant to each of us is going to differ substantially depending on what our field of study and intended career is. So it's definitely important for you and whatever you're doing to know where are the places specific to you and your studies and your career that you can tap into some of this kind of information. It's especially important to have an accurate sense of what in your field people are currently looking for, so you don't have an outdated understanding of that. In some fields, that can change really very rapidly. And with the pandemic, I think it's changed in a lot of fields, to be honest. Um, so doing that kind of background research is going to help you to know what kind of information you might need to put in your job application materials, or if there's certain things that you're seeing that a lot of employers are asking for that you don't have yet. It can help you to know this is something you need to pursue, before you go on the job market, whether it's learning that you pursue through a class at the university or through some other means, because there are a lot of outlets for that as well. So make sure that you're thinking about doing this kind of homework. I think one of the big mistakes people make with their job application materials is they approach them entirely from their own perspective. Um, I want a job, and this is the kind of job I want, as opposed to approaching it from this perspective of, I need people to hire me. Here are what the hiring people are looking for. Um, so here's what I can tell those people about what I can bring to them that'll make them want to hire me. Because job application materials are audience-oriented materials. It's not about what you want. It's about providing information that the hiring manager or the person who is making the employment decisions is seeking. So yeah, you need to be persuasive. And to be persuasive, you need to know what to put into those materials that is going to persuade, that's going to help you to stand out. We talked a few weeks ago about what it means to be persuasive, generally speaking, in technical communication. And you may remember I had a couple slides that had some of these things on it. I made another slide basically from images from those slides, kind of putting them all together. What are the keys to persuasive communication? And we talked before when we were talking about the claim letter, for example. How do you do these kinds of things in a claim letter? And you have to do these kinds of things in your job application materials too. So, for example, um, in your job application materials, you have to identify your goal. So, what is a way you might identify your goal in your job application materials? When I say job application materials, I'm primarily meaning a resume and a cover letter. How would you let the reader know what your goal is? No thoughts on that? Stating your objective up front. Yeah. So especially in a resume, you might actually have a specific statement of objective that is often at the top of the resume page, well, underneath your name and contact info. And so that will let the person know what is the specific position you're seeking, and you got to be clear about that, right? Similarly, in a job application cover letter, the opening paragraph will usually contain a sentence where you explain what the position you're seeking is. So even though you may be attaching your resume and or your letter in some sort of online job application tool, you still need to have these things in your documents, because your resume might be downloaded and shared around to a hiring committee, or if you're going to something like a job fair, or speaking with a wide range of people, you're going to want to have that kind of stuff on your resume. So it seems mundane. Identify your goal, and yet if you don't identify your goal, how do they know what you want? How do they know which job you want to apply for? Um, how and we're not going to talk about all of these, so don't worry about that. How might you support your claims in your job application materials? Usually in job application materials, people say a lot, make a lot of claims about themselves. How would you support those claims? That's right, with examples. So, one of the problems I often see in job application materials is people make claims. They'll say things like, um, you know, I'm detail oriented and I enjoy working in a fast-paced environment, but they don't have any examples that actually show what they can do, that actually show how they've used their detail orientation to accomplish things. And so job application materials need to be very concrete. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in them is to make just sort of empty claims that aren't backed up with anything else. Um, and that's, as we'll talk a little bit about after we get back from spring break, that's one of the big pitfalls to using chatbots to help you with job application materials, because the chatbot does not have real examples from your life. Only you have the real examples from your life. So those things have got to get into your materials. Um, so, like I said, we won't go through all of these, but these are still the lenses that we use when we are writing job application materials. For example, we still have to think about, how do we appeal to common goals and values? How are you going to show, for example, in your job application materials that you're a good fit? We still have to connect with our audience and their concerns. One of the biggest mistakes in job application materials that I see is the writer talking about what this job will do for them, as opposed to what they can do for the employer. So these keys to persuasive communication are really important in job application materials. And the more that you understand that your resume and your letter are about persuading this other person to make a decision to hire you, it will help you to put the appropriate lens on in terms of seeing the material you need to include and things that you don't need to include or that would not be helpful to include. So with that said, let's